My guest this week has brought a fascinating topic to the table. Was Judas really a bad guy? Was he really the betrayer when that was the plan all along? Jesus and his Father, God Almighty, concocted the plan for Jesus to be betrayed and sacrificed to save us all from sin. And if that's the plan, Judas is a part of the plan, then his role is an important and necessary role. So was Judas really the bad guy, or was he the victim? That is the subject of God Dethroned's next album, The Judas Paradox, which will be out September the 6th. And I got to sit down and talk with Henri, the frontman, about this concept, about whether or not Judas had free will in the matter or not, whether we have free will. Let's let you hear from the man himself. No more delay. Here is Henri from God Dethroned. Henri from God Dethroned, welcome to Heavy Metal Philosophy.
Thanks for having me, man.
It's a pleasure, and I really wanted to talk to you about the new record, The Judas Paradox, because the story on this thing just has me fascinating. The opening track, and then also the song, The Hanged Man. It's Judas like, hey, you knew this was going to happen. Like, this was your plan for me all along. And the whole you becoming the king of the world doesn't happen without me being a part of your plan. It's kind of a bad rap that Judas gets here.
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, he was innocent. He was part of a scheme. Um, I found out that in the Bible, there's contradicting stories about Judas and his role in the whole thing. And one of the stories goes like Jesus can look into the future, makes up this plan. He needs to die to be able to return as king of the world. So he looks into the future and knows how it's going to happen, and he chooses Judas as the chosen one to fulfill the plan, which makes Judas a victim and not a perpetrator.
Yes. Yeah, I
And
feel
so,
like,
and
go
so
ahead.
the song is told from the point of view of Judas. You see everything happening through the eyes of Judas, which is a different point of view
Yeah. I,
compared to what we're used to. You know what I mean?
I feel like we've all been made victims a bit here because, I grew up in the South of America in a very fundamentalist Christian household, and I took a lot of things for granted. And then as I got older and I sort of moved away from religion and I look back at some of those things that I took for granted, I realized, wow, I never thought about it in that way. One of those things is free will in general. God knows everything. He's omnipotent. And yet it's our choices that makes us sinners. And I can't square that. I can't square that there's a plan and he's all powerful, and yet us lesser beings are making these choices and we're the bad ones.
It doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, if you're living like a normal life and you're not hurting or harming anybody else, then why are you a sinner?
People that listen to this show are going to go, here he goes again. But I ask everybody if they believe in free will or not, because I just find that fascinating. And everybody has a different answer too. But this record really made me think about it differently, because Judas says in the song Judas Paradox, I didn't act on my own free will. I didn't have any free will. And in the chorus, it says that Jesus is the only one that had free will in this whole thing, which makes sense because Jesus is the Son of God, and the rest of us are mere mortals.
Very true. Like I said, there's two versions in the Bible. One is the story that everybody knows, that Judas is the betrayer of Jesus Christ, and the other story is the story where Jesus can look into the future and makes Judas a victim of his plan. So in that case, there is no free will.
Mm.
But I guess it all comes down to the fact if you believe or not. If you
Right.
don't believe, then there is free will because you choose what you're going to do and what you don't going to do.
I always felt that I had free will growing up because, I make all sorts of choices every day. What
Yeah.
album do I want to listen to on the drive to work, for instance? But I remember the first time I heard metal. I didn't choose to be a metalhead. It reached out, it grabbed me, and the transformation was instantaneous. I had no say in the matter. It's like as soon as I heard that first I was like, "Oh, this is me from now on. I can't go back to the way I was before."
No, and that's a good thing, I guess. And it's just a matter of taste. And I think you just decided on your own that you like that kind of music, and nobody made that choice for you.
I think we have certain tendencies, and that's what guides and shapes what things that we do have free will over.
Yeah, tendencies and prejudice and things that are considered common and things that are considered strange. So we don't do that, all kinds of stuff that influences us in everyday life. But I think when you're being your true self and you do what you really want to do, then you make your own decisions and your own choices. But when you live somebody else's life because people expect you to do something or have a job and take care of a family and raise children and whatnot, then you're living somebody else's life. And then you're not living your own free will.
Yes. And I love that perspective on it because it's hard. It's not a matter of just I'm gonna live my own life and you just make that decision. It takes work, it takes self-work, it takes arranging your circumstances to be able to live your true authentic self in that manner.
Yeah, and you have to take it slowly, I guess. You cannot nothing happens overnight,
Right,
so
right.
but I think you'll manage.
So I want to get back to Judas because I find this part of the story interesting too. So after the deed is done, he gets his silver and he buys land. Now, here is where, at least according to the denominations I was raised in, Judas could have asked for forgiveness. And then he would have gone to heaven after he died, but he didn't ask for forgiveness. And instead, he chose suicide, which is an interesting wrinkle to me on that story. Like after you've betrayed, like you said in the song, from Judas's point of view, Jesus was like a brother to him.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting aftermath out of all that. He could have chosen the ultimate loophole, get out of jail free card. He could have asked for forgiveness, but he didn't.
Yeah, there's also contradictions there because it's said that he wanted to return the silver and didn't want to accept it, basically meaning he didn't want to do it. It's written everywhere that he went back with the silver and tried to return it to free himself from the burden, but it was refused. He was basically, I think he was basically told, you have to do it. You made that promise, you will do it now. And then apparently he did so.
Mm.
So I gave a little twist to that. I said, I never got the silver. It's a lie.
Mm.
Like it was made up afterwards that he got paid a lot of money to do this. But in the song, the Judas Paradox, he says, I never got the silver. It's a lie. Because he was, he couldn't make a choice because Jesus had already done that for him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense from multiple perspectives too, because if he really truly was a disciple, if Jesus really truly was like a brother to him, then that must mean that he was a true believer. He believed in the cause, and this was a necessary action that had to happen. Jesus had to make this sacrifice, and so Judas's part was just as important to that goal.
I think that's true. I think the 12 disciples were all very happy to be one of the disciples. Some of them has been written that they had a certain bond with Jesus, and Judas is left out there. We don't know much about him at all. Only the fact that he was a betrayer. But maybe he was a very close one to him, and that's why he was chosen.
Right.
Oh, it could be.
Yeah, and why would you choose the guy that denies Jesus when the bird crows? You wouldn't choose that guy for
No,
such an important role.
yeah, exactly.
Huh. Yeah, that's a cool one to think about. And I love this different perspective because so for instance, there's a band Brodequin that I had on, and their subject matter expertise is medieval torture. And so I asked them, I was like, why were people so mean to each other back then? And he explained it in such a way, it was like, yeah, it makes way more sense because when we get these historical stories, we get this very general idea. And I just don't believe that the general people back in 1600s were much different than us. They probably had compassion and empathy. And I don't believe that they went to the town square and reveled in seeing people being broken on the wheel and whatnot, unless they were told this person is the other, the betrayer, possessed by demons or some sort of thing to make them guilty, and then it's justified to treat them in such a way.
Yeah, and probably also the people who lived in that town didn't have much choice. Maybe they were forced. Maybe it was common to go to a public execution. Maybe they were all raised in a way that if somebody was killed on the town square or torn in four pieces, quartered at the town square, maybe it was like mandatory to go and visit that
Mm,
thing. On the other hand, we also think of massive crowds of people who are going there to see that happening. But that's not true because everything was small. It was small cities, small towns. There were not many people there. There
mm,
were just a few clergymen, there were some noblemen, and the rest was farmers. There was not that many people, and the people who were working the lands didn't have all the knowledge. So if the so-called smart people basically told them, this is what happened, and you don't know what happened, but I will tell you what happened, and you are forced to come down to the market square and see this execution, then what would you do? You would probably go because what do you know,
right, right. And this took place in Europe where the really big cities are really far apart. So it's mostly going to be villages.
Yeah,
And there was no internet. So people couldn't, compare notes, dispute
well,
assertions. You had to sort of accept the party lines, for lack of a better term.
yeah, you had no choice basically.
Yeah. What evidence are you going to be shown to make you doubt at all?
Yeah, nothing. Only the sword, probably.
And uh, that makes it make so much more sense because I don't believe that a human being 300 years ago is that much different than a human being today physiologically. I don't
Yeah,
think we've evolved physically that much. It's just the progress of society has somewhat evolved, but we're really still those same people.
yeah.
And if we were put in those same circumstances, I don't think that we would make this enlightened moral choice that we would like to think we would.
No, I totally agree. I think you're 100% right.
I think that that's a big part of why I love metal so much. It's that confrontation with our darker selves, because I really believe that you need to do that in order to actually have the will when the time comes. I strongly believe in this saying, it's easy to be an angel in paradise. I'm here in my comfortable home. I'm having a good season this year on the farm. Crops are growing. It's really easy for me to be just peaceful and harmless, basically. But when the circumstances change, then I have to make hard choices.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the next part of the free will question. The the technicality on this album is pretty apparent to me. Especially on the more okay, so when there's a heavy riff with like some black metal tremolo picking, I can hear in the lead guitar work a counter melody that gives it some depth. And I hear that and I think to myself, these guys really understand not just metal, but like fundamentals of music in general. And so when you have that sort of ability, it always leads me to the question, why extreme metal? Why do you prefer to make black and death metal in your case?
Oh, it's something that I grew up with, so it's in my system since day one, so to speak.
Mm.
When I started playing guitar, heavy metal existed, but not death metal.
Mhm.
Death metal and black metal were basically found out, like in the late 80s, early 90s, but death metal late 80s. So it came into existence while I just played guitar, and I developed myself by listening to Chuck, from Death. He was like a super amazing guitar player back in the day. He was a big inspiration. He was very technical as well, but he made
Yes.
really cool songs, really catchy guitar riffs. So he was a big inspiration. And Dave Mustaine back in the day, during Peace Sells, was a great inspiration. And those were technical guitar players. And I grew up with them, and I totally fell in love with that kind of music. Yeah, and I like the extremes, and it's something that stuck with me. I could play different types of metal. I could play different styles of music if I wanted to, but somehow this is just what's in my system, and this is what comes out. If I pick up my guitar to write a song, it will never be a power metal song. It will always be a black metal song.
Yeah.
It's just in my system. That's how it works.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I could make the rational choice and cover pop, for instance, and get far more views because I have a much wider audience available to me. But that's not what I love. I'm attracted to these extreme forms of music. The heaviness, pretty much groove and heaviness are like top of my list for what I'm looking for in music. And I can sit here and opine all day about this reason and that reason why I prefer that kind of music. But like you said, at the end of the day, it's just in me. It's just something about it and my proclivities. I just want that extreme metal all the time.
Yeah, that's how it works, man. It's not very complicated. It's just how it works. It's in your system, and it will probably stay there forever.
I believe so. I was always told that I would grow out of it. And, it hadn't happened yet. In fact, I just keep going further down the road. I started out just listening to Metallica, and eventually you get into Opeth and then Behemoth, and now it's just more and more extreme the older I get.
Yeah, you probably just you just discover more bands, and then there will also be more extreme bands part of that, and it's a great thing. There's so many great bands out there. It's unbelievable.
And indeed, indeed. I do believe there is a point of diminishing returns, though. I think there's, especially for me personally, I'm sure there's people that like even more extreme stuff than me, like some of the grind core bands, things like that. I do feel that there's a point of diminishing returns, but that's for me because obviously those bands have plenty of fans as well.
Yeah, yeah. And there is somebody who will like it all, and there's somebody who only likes the extremes, and there's somebody who likes the in-betweens. And I guess the more commercial or the more melodic or easy listening in music is, the more people will like it. But it's good that there's a lot of diversity. It's great that there's super extreme bands around, and people totally love it.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it would get boring if everybody wanted to do the same. That would be very, very boring.
indeed. And it's not just the music too, because some standard's the wrong word, but for lack of a better term, I'll use the word standard. Some standard genres like black metal, for instance, again, standard's the wrong word. I'd say like it's like a pillar of metal. Black metal is,
Yeah,
common, but in black metal, there's a range of what's considered raw or, has a nice production value. The Judas Paradox has clean production. I can hear the individual frequencies in their place, the bass is not competing for headroom in the mix, whereas a lot of black metal is really raw and kind of washed out sounding. And there's a group of people that really prefer that sort of sound over the more, they would call it polished sound. I would call it clean and well mixed.
Yeah, the thing is, if you put so many layers in the music like we did, then it's a pity not to hear them. I mean, if you
Agreed.
play all those details, but you cannot hear them as a listener, then why play them in the first place? Okay, so we played them. So I decided, because I mixed the album myself, so I decided I want to hear every detail as much as possible. So I cleaned up the mix so you can actually hear all the details. And of course, I totally understand that there's people who say, like, I like the music to sound a lot more raw and more underground, or whatever you want to say. But it's a choice. And I understand some people will not like it, and I understand some people will like it. It's all a matter of taste and choice. And I think in our music, if we put in so much detail, you can listen to our album like 10 times, and in the 10th time, you will hear different things than you did the first time or the 5th time. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to discover. And that, I think that's what makes our album so interesting.
Yeah.
If you can't hear it, yeah, what's the point?
Agreed. Especially with your music, because there's times where there's like a chunky, really distorted guitar, and then the other guitar might be playing a clean melody. And if it's not adjusted in the mix, you would never hear that clean melody.
Exactly.
And I always argue that it's not what makes it sound too polished, like poppy sounding, is overuse of compression, gritting the drums so that they're machine perfect. That's what takes the humanity out of it. It's not having attention to detail when it comes to the mix and understanding that certain frequencies compete with each other.
Yeah, true. That's true. I try to make it as lively as possible. I mean, the drums, they sound very snappy, there's very, very pointy sounding drums in the mix. So it has its aggression. Same goes for the guitars. It has this aggressive sound, but at the same time, it's diverse enough or separated enough. The frequencies are separated enough so you can hear every detail. And, it's a choice, like I said, and that's what makes it worthwhile to listen to the album, if you're interested in hearing all the details. But I guess the people who like our music, they want to hear all the details.
Yeah, it sounds great. The album is September the 6th, the Judas Paradox. Are there any plans to tour on the record after its release?
Yeah, we have a European tour coming up starting September 26th until October 28th with Batushka and Ultimas, with David Vincent, as you may know, and then somewhere early next year we will come to the US for a US tour.
Are you going to hit Georgia, Atlanta, perhaps?
Oh, definitely.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
all right. I'll try to be there for that one.
Cool, man.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me about this one. I really do. I find this concept about looking at it from Judas's point of view and whether or not he had free will in the matter, that's very fascinating. So thank you so much for giving that to the world, and good luck with the release and safe travels on the tour.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.